Good deal. Um, Thank you so much for coming on. The first question I always ask is, what made you choose this recipe?
So this recipe is a nice side dish. I have a restricted diet, so I can't eat a lot of things, grains included. And I'm looking at this bag of quinoa and it says super grain of the Andes, which I heartily disagree with that terminology
So
because
that it's not a that is super or it's a grain.
it's a grain.
Okay.
Quinoa is what we would call a seed grain.
So okay.
So versus a grass-based grain like an oat,
Got it.
corn, rice. Those are all grass-based grains, and that's typically what we think of as grains. They are seeds, but they're from grass and plants. Quinoa it's an actual true seed from a different type of plant, so it doesn't affect me with the inflammation the way that other grains do. So it's kind of my go-to stand-in for rice. It's also, in addition to some carbs, it's got a really good protein content, really good amino acids. So really just so the super part, I definitely do agree with. The other reason I chose this
I am disappointed that it's so popular now. Because when I was growing up, we ate it, but it was, I don't know. I guess my parents were trendy without meaning to be, but
well, I think more what it is probably your parents were more attuned to an indigenous diet,
true,
because
very much. My dad was very much Native American culture centric. So.
Exactly. So with that, they don't just get in the pig, chicken, cow, corn, oat, rice mentality that we get in as Westerners, because we've got this mentality that those are the only animals we can eat is pig, chicken, cow, and the only things we can eat as far as.
Oh, you said pig. I kept thinking pig, chicken.
Oh no, pig, chicken, cow.
Oh yeah,
everything's pork, poultry, and
soon
beef.
We'll have the genetic thing where they're all one thing,
right? Yeah, exactly. So I like to get away from those things and diversify the diet a little bit. So that's another good reason to incorporate quinoa, and probably a reason that your family was more attuned to it is because you were into more of a diverse diet.
Yeah.
So another reason I chose this recipe is because oftentimes with infused food, people go straight to baked goods or candies or things like that,
or things that are harder to make, actually, that more exotic, I guess.
Granted, yeah, absolutely.
Special.
So with this, it gives you something that is not sweet, so you're not having to worry about are you giving yourself a diabetic coma when you're trying to medicate. And it's a side dish that can go with a lot of different things. So with that, shall we get started?
Yeah.
All right. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to take our quinoa, about 1 cup of it.
And now, quinoa, unlike other grains, doesn't puff up tons.
It will swell. You'll have about double yield on it.
Okay, so you're rinsing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna rinse it cold water. This is just gonna kind of rinse off any dustiness, a little bit of extra starch that may be on the outside.
Well, now you're showing that I don't have my dishes washed.
So we're just gonna kind of run through until it's all wet.
Don't they say that it reduces the bitterness by rinsing?
He wanted to know if it reduced the bitterness by rinsing it. Have you heard that?
That's a great question. I have not heard that.
Okay.
But I don't know everything. So
I do know that in non-U.S. countries, everybody always washes their grains. And I don't know, in the U.S. we tend to not.
I always rinse my rice too, because even though I can't eat it, I still cook it for my family. And with the rice, I was taught that it was to rinse off a little bit of the starchy coating.
Oh, so it doesn't stick together so much.
Correct. So you get more individual grains.
Here, can we see what it looks like?
Yeah.
Just look like, I don't know. It's kind of, all right.
It's just basically it's just wet seeds at this point.
Wet seeds.
It's nothing too exciting. Yeah. So I'll set that aside in there. We're going to start some olive oil over here in another pot. And I'm kind of taking a step ahead here, where I'm using a CBD infused olive oil.
Okay.
So this has a content of 50 milligrams per teaspoon. So 1 tablespoon is going to give us 150 milligrams. Now we're going for the batch here. So I'm going to give the 2 tablespoons at 300 milligrams. This is going to be about four people that we're going to serve off of this. So this is a medicated CBD dose.
And we'll talk about more while it's cooking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this olive oil is really nice. This is produced locally with organic sun-grown hemp and organic olive oil, and that's it. And it has a nice earthy, hempy flavor to it. So we will start that warming just a little bit. And because it does have cannabinoids in it, we are going to not let it get to a smoke point.
Well, olive oil tends to smoke.
Yes, it does. So I'm just going to put it on some low heat while we slice some garlic. If we can open the package.
Oh, look at that cute little thing of garlic.
This is my favorite way to buy garlic. I've only found it this way at Kroger. They don't pay me for saying that, but they should. It comes in a little pouch that has these individual cryovac pouches inside it. And the reason it's my favorite is that it stays a little bit fresher longer, but also with those individual cryos, if one of them goes bad and you get some mold on that garlic, it stays in that cryo. If you have a little bag of garlic, like most of the other places sell, that is just loose cloves, then it spreads very quickly and spoils the rest of your garlic.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So I'm doing a slice on the garlic rather than.
I'm admiring your knife. Oh my goodness.
I'm really enjoying this knife. It was a YouTube ad, and I got it for Christmas.
Well, now we have to try to get him to endorse our show.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
But it's very comfortable. It's got a lot of control.
Oh my goodness, the smell of that oil already.
Yeah, I just threw in the garlic. Just gonna let that get slightly light golden. It's gonna happen fast.
So you're slightly toast, and you just toast in the garlic and the quinoa in the oil.
Correct.
At a really low temperature.
As low as I can get this stove to go. So stir that around just a little bit, and we are going to add stock. I'm using vegetable today to keep it vegan friendly. Normally at home I would use chicken stock just because that's what I like for a richer flavor, but hey, never hurts to keep things vegan, and that way everyone can partake.
That's a very rich veggie stock. Look at that.
This is
I've seen some of it really like almost
clear.
Clear, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is pretty good.
That's a broth, not a. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So
thing.
it's again, I bought it at Kroger.
Just like,
they don't pay me to say it, but they should. No, it is a nice one. It's organic. I like it because it doesn't have any added sugar, and that is really hard to find in a prepared broth or stock. That last little bit I put in there was made it into 2 1/4 cups. I like to add the little extra 1/4 cup because it gets the quinoa a little more done to a kind of a fluffier texture. I'm being very chefy and just pouring things into my hand here, but it's a teaspoon of salt. We're going to do a 1/4 tea of black pepper.
You have what do you call it? The hand that can measure the weight of stuff.
You know, I've just to some extent it's an eyeballing. I visualize what a teaspoon looks like and pour that much in my hand. You know, so using poultry seasoning. So this is going to give us a nice herby, earthy flavor that's going to complement the earthiness of quinoa.
What's in the poultry seasoning? It's like sage and
it's sage, marjoram, rosemary, black pepper, nutmeg, and thyme.
Oh, and
So-
nutmeg. Huh?
Yeah, yeah. The nutmeg's
I
got
never
a nice
thought of
little,
that.
you know, a
It's
little woody pop to it.
It's like it doesn't have parsley for the
Doesn't
song.
have parsley.
you
No.
know.
Yeah. And then I'm going to use this. It's a Mrs. Dash type seasoning. I like that because it's salt free. It has some dried vegetables in it, so it's got some dried bell peppers,
So
dried
you're
carrots.
like elevating. Basically, you're adding dried veggie broth.
Exactly.
It's just like
Exactly. And that's going to give us a nice little bit of particulate because, believe it or not, those tiny little carrots and bell peppers and stuff in there, as they absorb the stock, will swell up a little bit, actually visible. So we're going to do that. And just for a little extra fun, we have a little cannabis tincture here. We're going to just put that in there. Make sure we're incorporated really good.
and you still have it at really low heat, right?
I have it up to about medium heat. I'm going to bring it up to a boil now and then cover and reduce the heat.
Okay.
That happened really fast on this stove. All right, so
So how do you think it differs from rice as far as cooking? Well, I mean, it's extremely teeny, so
yeah. That said, it's very hard, so it still takes as much time as rice.
got it. So, and
I
it
would
needs
say
more water, I feel.
slightly bit more water to me. Now, if you're also, I'm using a white quinoa. There's red quinoa. There's black quinoa. Those are even a little bit harder.
Got it.
So they will tend, and you see them in a tricolor. I've got a tricolor blend at home.
I used to think that the white was when they just cleared the, like we do with rice.
Like with rice.
They scrub the outside
Right.
off white rice.
But actually, with quinoa, it's just a different.
I
variety.
like the thing I like about quinoa, when it's leftover, it's real easy to handle. Where rice, especially
Yes.
white rice, the leftover
Yeah.
has its tendency to stick together, but the quinoa stays nice and smooth.
Absolutely, yeah, and
Right.
it's because it's got that lower starch content, and that also makes it a little easier when you're cooking it because it's not quite as finicky as rice. You need to go back and stir it every now and then, but it's not going to stick and burn
together.
nearly like rice will.
So if it has lower starch, does that mean it's better for diabetics?
I would say so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a higher protein, lower carb
Okay.
as far as the macro balance.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
So yeah, I mean, so we're dealing 27 carbs per 43 grams. So I mean, it does have a good carb content, but it's also got 6 grams of protein. In
Okay.
there. So you've got much more than what you would see in rice as far as the balance of the nutritionals on.
And let's see, how long does it say that it usually takes to cook?
It's about 20 minutes.
Okay.
I'm gonna add just for a little fun. I got one of our local farms. I did a cannabis infusion demo last week for 420, and
I thought that was a whole bag of marijuana.
no.
Just like,
That would be
it's
an awesome-
oregano, everybody.
That would be an awesome prop, but it actually is oregano, officer.
Just
um,
like,
So
hey, you
I'm
know
just-
it's legal in our state.
yes. Well, I'm well aware.
But
I enjoy it legally frequently. So I'm just going to throw in a little bit of extra dried oregano just because I have it. If you don't have it, there's enough herb content in the poultry seasoning that, you know, your garlic and herb from the name of the dish and also the flavor profile of the herbs are still represented. So that's why I like to use that poultry seasoning in there.
now, speaking of CBD, it seems like extremely complicated. Like a lot of information is out there about it. How much you're supposed to do, what kind you're supposed to do. That, you know, it is a medical product. You want to.
So CBD in and of itself is an amazing molecule that it has a lot of bioactivity in different parts of the body with different receptors. And it is, if you had to name one thing that it is, I would say it is a modulator. And the reason that I would say that is because CBD, it fine tunes your immune system to some regard where it tamps down inflammation. So some people will say, oh, it's an immunosuppressant because inflammation is an immune response. Well, inflammation is an immune response, but when it's overactive and it's causing problems, then we can reduce that response, and now we're bringing the body back into balance. But CBD also, it inhibits expression of ACE2 proteins, which actually is the protein that the COVID virus uses to infect the cell.
Got it.
So from that standpoint, it also can be an immune booster, and it helps the immune system function more properly. It's also a modulator when it comes to THC. So THC
Yeah,
is,
can you
of course,
differentiate CBD and THC?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So miles apart. THC is the psychoactive component. It's the high. And
Wait, CBD doesn't get you high; it just makes you happy.
so it's an anxiety reducer.
Okay.
So
Again, you said modulator. So
yes,
a lot
exactly.
of things in your life that has
Balance.
yeah, that has spikes.
Yes. Yes.
Inflammation, anxiety,
Correct.
but also the other way too.
Correct. Yeah. If you hit a low, then CBD can help balance you and bring you up the other way. And what CBD does with THC is that it changes the way that THC interacts with your cannabinoid receptors. So if you think about it, it's a poor analogy because our bodies are not exactly designed this way, but it's about the best analogy you can do at the moment. If you think of a key and lock system, right? Your receptor is the lock, the cannabinoid is the key. It fits into that lock in a certain way, and the way it turns, it activates it in a certain way. Well, if you put it with another cannabinoid, now your key is shaped differently, and when it goes into the lock, it turns and hits different tumblers. So
Got it.
So what CBD does is it modulates some of the
one
effects of
unlocks
THC.
the outer door and one locks the inner door.
So to
I'm
speak.
trying to go with
So
it
to
now.
speak. It's kind of another way I like to describe it is if you think of THC. Well, if you think of cannabinoids as an electrical wire, okay. In that electrical wire, you have your main copper wire that's carrying your electricity, right? But you have all these other wires that go along to carry back, and you have insulators and grounding wire and all this kind of stuff that goes with it.
I'm trying to see where you go because I don't know. I'm an actual electrician by trade.
Exactly.
It's just like,
So here's where I'm going. Is CBD was identified in the 30s, and because it did not get you high, they put it on the shelf and said this is an inert compound in the plant, which is a stupid comment because nothing is inert when you put it in your body. Period. I don't care if it's salt, if it's pepper, if it's oil.
it interacts with your body somehow.
They just didn't know how, and it didn't do the thing that they were looking for it to do.
Right.
So they said, we're just going to put this on the shelf. Nearly 40 years later, they discovered THC and went, ah, we found it. They found the wire that carries the electricity. And what they did was they took and they said, now this is the only one we need because we found the electricity. And everything in the industry, which was all underground at that point, sought after THC. Everything was breeding to high THC, high THC, high THC. And what we've come to now is this place where you have so many strains out there that are high THC and devoid of almost all of the other cannabinoids.
I mean, they're literally just a drug, not a medicine.
THC is still a medicine. It really is. It just has to be applied in the proper dosage and for the proper therapy. Right. Believe me, THC is one of my medicines. It's an incredible pain reliever for me, but it's also an incredible mental focuser for me because I have both Tourette's and IBS. So for my IBS,
but you're doing it for medicinal, not to get like whacked out.
Correct, but I also
there you go. I brought a 70s reference.
I also engage in spiritual practices with cannabis.
Right.
So there are times where I'm seeking to go deeper into an altered state for spiritual purposes.
But you know your levels of dosage.
Exactly.
You figured it out, so you don't like. And the first time you take it, just knocks you on your butt.
And the other thing that I do is I pair it with the proper other cannabinoids. So I use almost always a 2-to-1 CBD or CBD-CBG with THC.
Okay, so if you balance them together.
Correct.
I remember years ago learning that with turmeric, if you don't eat turmeric with a fat,
it also has to have black pepper.
And black pepper. it will not release fully or
Correct.
almost at all.
Correct.
And so similarly with,
Yep. So the benefit you're talking about is what we refer to as synergy, and that is multiple things working together to create a greater effect than the combined effect of those things alone. So it's more than an additive effect; it's a synergistic effect that
Got it.
becomes multiplicative.
So you don't just take a lot more and get a better thing.
Correct.
You're balancing it with other stuff.
Cannabinoids function on what's called a biphasic effect curve. So it's a bell curve, right? So this biphasic term means two ways of being, right? Two phases, right? So what happens is you have up to the top of the bell curve, you have increasing benefit, and then you have a peak where you have maximum benefit. When you go past
Oh
that
man, I
peak,
just got a whiff of your food. Sorry,
That's
I'm like
okay.
it got distracted.
That's
It started
okay.
to smell
That's a
really
good
good in
thing.
here.
That's a good thing if my food is distracting. So then when you start going past that optimal dose, now you start having diminished or even opposite effects. So CBD, which is actually an alerting molecule at a low dose, if you take too much CBD, becomes a sedating molecule because it hits that other side of the biphasic curve.
I mean, that's the hard
Same
thing with
thing.
anything, any food, anything we take in our body. We have to learn to know what is too much.
It's balance.
It's
It's all balance.
Too much meat, too much fat, too much salt, too much of anything.
Exactly.
At the right dosage. I don't know why I'm saying dosage with food, but at the right amount, any food is medicine.
Well, that's why you said dosage.
Right.
Because, my wife will get things and she'll send me, did you know that garlic has a really powerful antibiotic in it? Yeah.
Just like,
I mean, most spices, herbs, vegetables even. I mean,
I mean, there's some spices you're like, why did we ever start eating this? And we realized because it helped us.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I mean, I feel like that way about beer. Like people are like, I love beer, and it was back in the day when drinking water killed you.
Yeah.
So certain cultures developed a flavor.
Exactly. So yeah, it really is. It's about finding that right balance point. But it's also about putting all of the elements together, kind of putting that genie back in the bottle. Because if you go back to before we started studying what was in cannabis, it was used for thousands of years in medicine. I mean, even in this country, up until the 30s and 40s, it was used in every pharmacy, and there were cannabis tinctures of different varieties in every pharmacy.
Now, do we have to differentiate between hemp and marijuana?
I mean, so those are made up terms that that we apply in a particular way to cannabis. Cannabis is the plant, and whether it is what is called hemp or CBD or marijuana or THC cannabis, it is all genetically the same species, and
it's just what you're growing it for.
And hemp was really, during revolutionary times was grown as fiber to make rope and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
rope, clothing, paper.
What was it? Hemp for victory. That was during the war.
And that was World War II, after it was already illegal, and they had to go back and say, we need you guys to grow hemp for us because we need rope, we need sails, because the word canvas.
I had read the statistic that George Bush got saved by a hemp parachute jumping out.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, but I mean, the word canvas is the Dutch word for cannabis.
Oh.
Because canvas was made from hemp. And strictly speaking, the word hemp can actually apply to any other fiber crop that is grown for fiber. We just typically apply it to cannabis hemp because it's very productive and it's very widely known and used. So the differentiation and where people will get into the sativa indica paradigm, I'm sure a lot of people have heard those terms. So historically speaking, in the 1790s, cannabis sativa was named. Sativa means useful, and that is what people associate with long, skinny plants, longer flowering cycle, usually equatorial regions, so longer growing period, and hence the longer flowering cycle. And typically associated with a lower THC content. Although I think that that's a bit of a misnomer historically speaking, because people think of sativas as the up high. You know, that's the get you going, get you charged. I'm gonna go write a song. I'm gonna go paint the paint. I'm gonna clean my house.
Wait
That's
a second.
sativa.
I always thought that it was make you relax. You just said it's an up.
So it depends on the variety. And let me come back.
Okay, yeah.
Let me
just
come back.
like-
So let's just lay the groundwork and take for granted that there is a possibility that some cannabis will make you down sedated and some will make you up energized. I like to use the terms energy and gravity because I feel like that gives a good
yeah.
portrayal of what it's going to do. And then there's a third category of sanctity that I like to offer as well. That's how deep does it take you into the unknown. But so for energy gravity, what people call sativa is that high energy high. That's that wake you up, get you going, clean my house, paint a painting, write a song, go on a hike, you know, do a good workout. And there are people who, if
You just
are,
described coffee.
well,
I would just like that. I mean,
yeah.
people accept coffee, but coffee's a drug.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, caffeine's a powerful drug, man. Yeah. It's interesting the things that people do and don't accept and you know, normalize versus feel are taboo. So the sativa is typically associated with a more of an up energized high, and I believe that is why historically it was thought of as less of a drug type. You know, what we associate with that down heavy sedating, what they call couch, is the indica strains, which are more India, Afghanistan, that type of region, grown at higher elevations. It's a shorter, bushier plant with denser flowers, shorter flowering time, broader leaves. It's the same plant, but it's a different variant. So just like a Great Dane and a Chihuahua look different, you know, a sativa cannabis plant and an indica cannabis plant, they're adapted to their growing.
Yeah.
So they're going to grow different. It just makes sense. They also produce different terpenes.
For me, it would be Scotch bonnet and habanero.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly the same, just grown in a different region.
Exactly. Yeah. So with that, they produce different terpenes in the different regions that they grow in. And terpenes are chemical compounds that are found in all plants that produce the aromas of plants. And they're not just found in cannabis, but that's what makes it smell skunky or lemony or fruity or earthy or like sandalwood. It's the combination.
Oh, I thought that was just them smoking it and it made them think that.
No, it's actually
really.
And in fact, your nose can inform a lot of what strains will benefit you, because if
I guess
a strain
if it
smells
smells good, you would know it was good for you.
Yes. If
Oh,
it
wow.
smells good to you and you're like, wow, I love that one. Your body knows we need that. And so when you smell it, it translates to, yes, that's the benefit that we need.
But that's if you're in tune with your body. I mean, a lot of us have really lost that.
That's how I smell my wine. I always smell it and it says your body needs this wine.
There you go. There you go. So the terpenes being what makes the differentiation of the effects, terpenes from one region and terpenes from a different region they're
so it's like micro brews where that and then I mean we could go back to cheeses and wines and like different regions and different growers.
Absolutely. So what's happened though since modern cultivation is that people now want to select for, ooh, I like this one the way it makes me feel this way, but I like that one the way it makes you feel that way, or I like this one the way it smells, or that one the way it grows.
So we hybridize
them. Yeah. And so now we've got all these different strains that were named sativa for these tall, skinny plants, and indica for these short, bushy plants that were from a different region in India. Indica literally means from India. And the term Indian hemp was applied to it. That's what it was called when Shakespeare smoked it. And they have hybridized these now so much that any differentiation of sativa or indica that you could say was a speciation or a subspeciation has really been erased by modern cultivation practices. So those terms are very.
But I mean, they tried to still keep it for the federal laws for a while.
Well, according to the federal law, all of it's cannabis sativa.
Okay.
It's cannabis sativa. L is the species name under federal law, and whether you call it an indica strain or a sativa strain, it's all under that one species under federal law. Same thing with hemp.
Okay.
All of the hemp is one species under federal law, and so that's where again the subspecies thought process kind of breaks down.
Because I mean, people can historically, I mean, they always had the ability to grow hemp. No.
Yeah,
I mean, because it was
one of
just
the
low,
cultivated plants. It's one of the earliest
and it grows
medicinal
really,
plants that was documented for medicinal use.
for paper, for cordage.
Textiles, clothing. Yeah, absolutely.
I remember as a teenager reading a book called "The Emperor Has No Clothes."
Yes,
and
Jack Hare.
Yeah, and it was just mind-opening how the drug industry and I think it was the oil industry and the drug industry got together and said, we don't want anybody to have the ability to make their own stuff.
Yeah, so you saw, prohibition went from everybody having cannabis tinctures and, it being completely legal and innocuous and nobody thinking a thing about it. To,
literally growing and making your own shirts, like easier than cotton.
In 1937, they applied the Marijuana Tax Act, which said that anyone who prescribes this pays a huge tax on it.
And so they didn't make it illegal; they just made it too expensive.
Not initially. They just made it prohibitive, cost prohibitive. At the same time, the hypodermic needle was invented, and cannabinoids are not water soluble, but opioids are. And opium could be injected, and morphine could be injected, and so the hypodermic needle and opioids replaced a lot of cannabis tinctures because
and those are much more dangerous.
Faster, absolutely. Yeah. Faster acting, easier to control. You knew what you were getting more because
and addictive, of course.
Much more addictive.
Absolutely. So it was a combination of the political agenda against it with timber, oil, and pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals were really just starting to be developed at that time, and what they did was they went from there to I believe it was 44 where they finally made it actually illegal, which is no, I take that back. It was before that because 44 was when they did the Hemp for Victory campaign.
Right, it was already illegal, but then they had all the farmers couldn't grow hemp anymore, and they needed it all for the war effort. Right. So I remember seeing that little video. It was like put out by the government. Yeah. To try to get farmers to grow hemp because they had made it illegal.
Yeah. And ironically, it was put out after the government put out Reefer Madness. Which is, if you haven't seen Reefer Madness, it is really, really worth a watch. It's some of the most preposterous interpretation of the effects of cannabis you will ever see, and some of the most racist tropes you will ever see. And that is where the term marijuana became applied to cannabis that gets you high. So,
and it was THC for a specific demographic of people.
Because at that time, all of the
this is fun. This is not just a cooking show.
No. We're going deep.
The food's probably already cooked.
Oh, it is. It's done. Yeah, it's done. But so we're going deep. So what happened was you had Henry Anslinger, who came out with a campaign against what he branded as marijuana. Everybody had cannabis tinctures in their home cupboard for all sorts of ailments. But they called it cannabis. Right. And they used it in a tincture form. So they just took a little medicine in a spoon, and that was it. Well, the black jazz musicians and the Mexican immigrants like to smoke cannabis, and they called it marijuana. And so Anslinger picked up this term marijuana, and he applied it to cannabis. And now suddenly nobody knew that this was the same thing that everybody's been using in a tincture form for thousands of years. And got all scared of it, and they made it illegal, and they put out this propaganda campaign that, oh, if you use cannabis, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to have.
What I remember from that video is the person took like one like smoke of it and then killed everybody. Like it was just like
didn't kill everybody. They got in their car and ran over a person because they were so crazy high. But they take one hit and they start going. I mean, it's insane.
Okay,
it's insane.
So what? I want to get back to the cooking a little bit.
Sorry.
What? The history is like fascinating. What got you into? You're literally trying to term yourself like the cannabis cook.
Yeah, like, so to speak. So I have two different avenues that I explore. That one is the substitute chef, where I do my alternative ingredient recipes and custom create recipes for people, things like that. The other is communion cannabis, where I do medical cannabis advice. So I do crossovers like this, where I blend the two and teach people how to basically control their own medication. And through the course of that, I'm actually mentally noodling out, doing some workshops on how to make your own tincture and things like that, where I hope to do some live workshops with people where they come in, they bring their cannabis input, whether it's THC, CBD, whatever they need.
Right.
And then I teach them how to make it into a formulated tincture at the proper dosage.
I mean, that's the hard thing. Is like you're going buying someone else's something. It says it has a percentage of something, but is it the percentage of what you need?
Right. Right,
exactly. I mean, I personally find that any medication I take, I have to take the smallest. Like, I'm a big guy, but like, I'm very sensitive in what I take. So
yeah, and people get the misconception that it's just size, but it's not just size, because it's metabolism. And again, people associate that with size. They look at a thin person and go, "Oh, you have a fast metabolism." Well, but it's not just fast metabolism, slow metabolism. That plays into it. But it's about your actual metabolic enzymes. And each of us have a different genetic makeup of metabolic enzymes that our liver has that will contribute to how it breaks down different substances, cannabinoids in particular. So with that, if you have very active enzymes that are the particular enzymes that break down THC and CBD, then you will metabolize that more fully and get more of an effect than will someone who has less of those enzymes.
Now, quinoa, the first time I had it, if you look really closely, it literally looks like a pile of teeny itsy bitsy little worms.
Yes.
And what that is the little sprout of the seed.
Yeah, it's a little endosperm.
It's a little sprout in there. And so if you've never had quinoa, don't be surprised by that.
Yeah, it looks a little weird.
It's like, I don't know if the camera's good enough to show a close-up. Let's see here.
No, it's all blowing out because it's so light. Well, it's hard to see.
Yep, so.
Not enough resolution.
I'll take a close-up picture of it. But yeah, the first time I had it, I was just like, what is this?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. I've gotten so used to it now that I absolutely love it.
Even if you don't toast it, it tastes nutty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, but if you do that slight toast like you did there, it does have that. It elevates the nutty.
Yep, it does.
So.
Also in the Instant Pot, it's like 3 minutes in the Instant Pot.
Woo! It's just like
that. It's just like I mean, it just cooks so quickly.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but when I'm meal prepping at home for the family, like 3 minutes is way better. Trust me. With the quinoa, I always like to finish it with a little bit of olive oil.
Hey, Fred, we don't have Instapot endorsement yet.
Yeah, we got to hold back on that until we get the sponsorship.
Electronic pressure cooker.
Just drizzle with a little bit of olive oil here. This is infused with some rosemary, garlic, and a CBGA flower. CBGA is another cannabinoid. CBGA is actually the precursor cannabinoid in the plant. That is what the plant develops first that will then synthesize into THC, CBD, CBC, or the other cannabinoids.
So can you cover the different types of CBD you did put in there?
Sure. So
like,
so the different cannabinoids that we have going on in the dish. So I have the CBD from the sun-grown hemp. This is a full extract, so it's going to have all of the different
full extract means they just take everything out.
everything that's
That
in the
seems
plant.
the simplest. Just do that.
It is if that's what you need.
Okay.
So, and to that point, so with this, you're going to have all of the different cannabinoids that are in that CBD hemp, because it's not just CBD. There's going to be trace amounts of THC. There's going to
But
be,
I mean, if someone's
possibly
starting out,
CBD.
they might do a little bit of that because it covers. It's like
correct.
a wide spectrum antibiotic.
Correct.
And
so
then,
this
you
is
know,
what you would call a full spectrum product. It's got the naturally occurring range of cannabinoids that come from the plant, the way it grows. From there, you can move to what is called a broad spectrum, which generally speaking, broad spectrum is a term we apply when we remove THC to avoid any what they would call THC contamination for people who can't have it for either personal preference, medical reasons, job reasons, all of that. So that's what we would call a broad spectrum. You still get multiple cannabinoids, multiple benefits, you just don't have THC. And then from
is
there,
that difficult to do
for an extractor? What they have to do is they usually do it by gas chromatography, which is that the cannabinoids actually have a slightly different molecular size.
Okay.
And so when you heat them into a vapor, you essentially push them across a path that has different size holes in it.
Oh, so
and they fall into the right slump.
Okay, you can run them through a filter and basically.
Yes. Yeah, and so the THC will fall into this one over here, and you'll separate it out. The others will fall into these other bins, and you keep all those, put the THC away, or discard it, destroy it, whatever you have to do legally. And then that is now your broad spectrum. From there, to refine further, you would isolate different cannabinoids. CBD is often isolated. So CBD isolate, if you ever see that in the marketplace, it's rare that you see it out in stores because it's basically an ingredient level. I mean, you can just use it, but it's almost 100% CBD.
So they're just basically concentrating it.
Yeah, it's
okay.
It is like the molecule CBD.
Got it.
Usually 99% plus pure CBD if it's good. So with that, I use that to formulate my tinctures thusly. So you're
just basically creating the percentage you want.
Yes, I'm compounding.
Yeah.
So what I've done here, I made this morning in my kitchen. So this is CBD isolate. So I have a measured quantity of CBD. I use the THC input I use is what's called RSO, Rick Simpson oil.
Now, do you measure weight or
volume? I measure weight. Okay. So I measure by grams. And I actually will measure my oil by grams as well. Grams and milliliters are fairly equivalent. There's a slight fudge factor in there, but
I became a decent baker when I actually started weighing.
Yes.
I was just
yeah, because measuring in a cup for baking is not the same. Now that said, that's what I do at home, but for a professional setting, you definitely want to weigh. So with this, we have THC and CBD. I also have some CBG in this one, which is, I told you have CBGA in here. CBG is when we take that CBGA, A means acid. That's how it comes from the plant, but it's a very volatile form. And that acid side chain can be broken off with oxygen, heat, or time. So we apply heat to it, break off that acid side chain, it becomes much more stable.
So if you had the regular one and it just sat on your shelf, it would lose.
Eventually, that acid side chain will decarboxylate.
Got it.
Yeah. Over time, yeah.
But if they you said the change. G, then it's more shelf stable.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So if you take off the acid side chain, it becomes more stable molecule.
Very scientific.
Yeah. And
this sounds like making medicine to me.
Well, it really is. And it becomes a different bioactivity as well. So one of the things CBG does, it's great for inflammation, it's great for pain, but it's also a potentiator. So it actually boosts the effects of the other cannabinoids. So if you add some CBG you don't need as much of the THC to get the same effect. So that's always a nice thing because it can save a lot of money because CBG is something
you're being very specific. You know how much you need, and you're not wasting the product.
Correct.
I mean, I grew up. We did a lot of wild crafting. We had 10,000 acres of paper company land around our property, and we would go out there and wild craft. Especially after they clear cut, things would go wild. You get but part of it is a lot of hemp. We would get like bushels of. Not bushels, but get a huge bag of it, take it home, and cook it like spinach.
Yeah.
But you never knew what strength it was.
Right.
But we'd get the young, tender leaves and just cook that as spinach. And so I grew up eating that.
I mean, it's a really nutritious plant, honestly. Like you can juice the leaves, and they're really really good for you. It's got a ton of antioxidants. The roots are really good for you. The roots have plant sterols in them, which lower cholesterol. They have their own terpenes. I mean, it's amazing.
And really, they're just starting to find out because I mean, things have like become legal in the last like few years.
Yeah.
So people are just now starting to really branch out away from the psychotropic or whatever.
Yeah, the psychoactive.
Psychoactive parts.
Exactly, because for so long, you had people who would go, man, I don't know, it just helps. I don't know why, it just helps.
Right.
Now we're starting to break apart those whys. You've heard me mention CBD helps with inflammation. You've heard me mention CBG helps with inflammation. THC helps with inflammation. They all do it by a different mechanism in the body. And that's where that synergy comes in, because you're not just adding to the effect, you're hitting it from here and from here and from here. And so the analogy I like to give is you have a sprained ankle. Well, okay, you're gonna need some ice on that ankle, but you're also gonna need brace on that ankle, and you may need to take some pain medication for that ankle. So you're gonna have to impact that injury in different ways, and that's effectively what you're doing when you're bringing the synergistic effect of multiple cannabinoids together. So with this, we're gonna have a nice medicinal effect with CBD because we have a good hit of CBD in there. We're going to have a nice medicinal effect THC because we effectively have about 5 milligrams per serving of THC in there.
Now, the most amazing thing has happened in that I've been so interested in what you're talking about. I get distracted. There's a plate of food in front of me. I'm just like, this never happens.
You gotta
it's just like,
again, it's the balance, right?
I don't know. It's just like, but
the balance,
it's just
the education with the sustenance, the nutrition. So
it's just so flavorful. It's like you have like, I expected I'd taste a little sage or something, but it's like a balance of like a lot of stuff. I don't know. I hate to say this, but this almost tastes the like stuffing of a turkey.
You don't
like
you need to
it's
say
like
that.
it
Everybody
has
loves
like
stuffing.
it's like the good broth with a lot of herbs in it.
Yeah.
But some people overdo the sage or something. But this one, So
yeah, no, that's
all right. I'm
a
taking
little
this,
sage goes a long way.
That's
I'm
saving some in the pot.
You can keep talking. I'll be eating over here.
So
It's just like.
I have.
Oh no, I guess I should question how much eating of this will actually affect me. Because I am sensitive.
Yeah. So I would say probably about that much.
Okay, so this is like
a little 4-ounce serving.
This is probably 3 servings.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 servings. Yeah.
So because it's got the medicine in it, I should not eat the whole plate.
Also, with edibles.
And get used to it. I mean, that's part of it is you need to know your body.
Yep. You need to know. We have a motto that's start low, go slow. And that means if you have not used edibles before,
but it's so tasty.
I know that's where the tricky bit comes in with edibles. Is it
but a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're doing chocolates, I remember as a teenager, someone brought brownies to a party and didn't tell anybody. And some people ate like 3 or 4 of them.
Oh my
and
God.
they were not ready for that. I mean, and that's the thing about any medicine. You have to know your body and be ready.
Absolutely.
And with the edibles, I think you have to take time. You can't take one edible and say nothing happened. Well, I'll take another one.
Yes, you have to give yourself at least a couple hours, because if your body does have a slower metabolism and you get to an hour and a half and go, I don't really feel anything, I'm going to take another one. Well, in a half an hour, that first one's going to kick in. And guess what? 2 hours later, that second one's coming. So now you are in a world of hurt.
I mean, if you already know that, every 2 hours you take another one. But that'd be if you know your body, no dosage.
And really,
the problem is most people don't know how much they need.
Yeah. So for most people, you want to start with about a 2.5 milligram dose if you've never used edibles at all. See how that affects you. From there, adjust. Next time, if that didn't get you your desired result, go to 5. If that didn't get you your desired result, go to 7.5. But having that measured amount is critical because that lets you know where that point on the bell curve is.
Now, when you say critical, you make it sound like it's absolutely horrible if you take too much.
Well, some people have had really bad experience. What tends to happen is anxiety gets really pronounced.
Well, especially with the history of being told that how bad things could happen.
It does cause your heart rate THC does cause your heart rate to increase.
Ooh, so, I can get a cardiovascular workout without moving?
Sort of. Sort of. And so the other thing that happens, and we're gonna step away from the hard science a little bit here and go into more of the spiritual mechanisms. So I've coached some people through this experience, and the first thing that happens is they say, I can feel my body. And you say, yes.
Well, when your pain is gone.
Yes. Well, no, I'm saying when they're in that experience that is a little uncomfortable. That's usually where they start, is I can feel my body. And I say, yes. And they say, no, I can feel every bit of my body. One person told me, I can feel my bones. And I said, yes, I understand. You actually always can. You just don't usually pay attention.
Well, your brain turns off certain sensors in your body.
You just run autopilot on most of that stuff most of the time. And you forget that you live inside your body and that you are not your body. And when you suddenly become aware that you are living inside a biomechanical human suit, it feels very awkward. And so it becomes difficult to manage because
it could be just overwhelm a bit of information.
Yes.
If you're only focused on your hand, you won't notice your foot.
Right. And so we're not trained in this society to understand our bodies as a mechanism. We're trained to understand that that's what we are, that I am this body. And that's, in my opinion and understanding, that's not correct. We live inside this body and operate. So when you suddenly become aware that there's a separation between what is you and what is your body, it's a very awkward thing to suddenly realize that you have to manipulate this thing you live inside. So that's usually where it starts. And then they realize they can feel their heart. And so from there, I try to coach them, focus on it, and now slow it down, because you can do that.
When I went to nursing school, I actually freaked out my fellow nurses.
By slowing your heart?
Well, so like the nurse teacher finally came over because she's like, because we have to check everybody's heart and blood pressure. Blood pressure, I couldn't do as much. The heart, they'd get 5 different people who come to my heart and get all different. And the teacher came over and said, or just quit messing with them. Come on. They need to have some consistency. And I was just like, okay. I would just, I'd relax and I'd get excited. And, and it just change it by 10 or 15 beats.
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. Every voluntary process in your body can be made to operate as an involuntary process. And every what we call involuntary process in your body can be made to operate voluntarily. We just don't take the time to get familiar.
Monks definitely do. They
because
spend
the monks in
years and
Tibet
years.
can dry a sheet on a frozen cliff when they go out just wrapped in a cold sheet of ice water. They can dry that off by increasing their body heat, because that is a voluntary process when you learn how to do it. So when you're having that edible experience, you know, I try
So
to
that
coach
could be
people through.
really freak someone out, but they also could feel like a superhuman to feel like they can actually, hey, I actually have the ability to control my body.
And that's where familiarity with it is key, and building up to that level is key, because if you're going to engage in the more spiritual side of it, you have to practice. You have to build up a level.
But a monk would say food is medicine, medicine and day to day is a practice.
Yeah.
So that you're like, as a fully functioning human being, just going around and doing everything, every moment is a practice.
Absolutely.
And so it's not just like this.
It's conscious.
One moment out of a day or one moment out of a week. It's like every day and every moment.
It's living in a state of consciousness versus, you know, trying to.
That would scare the hell out of most people.
Because we're not taught to.
Well, I mean, like living in like noticing the world. Like we try to literally block out how.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
So don't overdo it.
Yep.
Unless you have a coach or start really small and learn your body.
You know, learn your tolerance, and from there.
But it would be, you know, drinking alcohol, drinking caffeine, anything, you know, I mean, eating fast food, anything really. It's like you need to know what your body can handle and how it affects your body.
Absolutely. And there's a point up to which it can be beneficial, and there's a point after which it is no longer so and can even be detrimental.
Yeah.
And so that's the key, is finding that balance.
Fine.
Cool.
All right.
That's what I have for everybody today. Any questions? I don't know how many people we've got, but any questions before we wrap up?
And this is exciting. We'll have to have you on when you start doing, you know, diffusions and other stuff. So, all right.